Thank you. Just before we had that very short break, we were on to item 4, which is the non-housing capital investment programme, Prudential Framework and Treasury Management Strategy, and Capital Strategy 25 to 26 and 29 to 30. I'll just ask if you can accept the recommendations.
Provost, I have my hand up.
Councillor Graham Clark.
Thank you. I have an amendment, which is an addition. We like to keep our capital expenditure to capital expenditure and not put it into our revenue budget. So it's an addition which would go into 2.3A.
Okay, do we have this? Can you?
Yes, it should come round. There's paper copies as well as it should be in the electronic copy. You want me to go ahead, Provost, or shall I wait?
You could just hold on a second, please. Got it. We already have money for the play parks, don't we? Okay, Councillor Clark.
Okay, as councillors will be aware, we had a £1 million allocation for the climate change fund, which is to be spent on capital improvements to council buildings. That's what it's allocated specifically for, and that's what this amendment refers to. And so looking at that, we have put a sum aside of £500,000 to modify and upgrade Barshaw Park Pavilion. Councillors might be aware that recent surveys of that pavilion, which were carried out under boards, showed that there was at least 100,000 needed for refurbishment. There are 3 key organisations there. There is the golf, which is the only open public golf course to people across Renfrewshire, which I think is really important, not only for people's recreation and access, but also for tourism. There is a very significant yachting club, which is celebrating its significant anniversary this year. And there's also the model railway. They all use that pavilion, which is a key pavilion in the centre of one of the main tourist attractions in Renfrewshire in Barshaw Park. And then we also have set 250,000 aside of that fund to help improve community centres across Renfrewshire, Councillor Doig, not just in Paisley, and that would help to modify them by helping them to come to better ecological ways of operating, which hopefully will reduce their costs. And then 250,000 towards the Kilbarcon Steeple, which we believe is an important development, which there's also other council monies going towards. And this would also bring in that climate change element to that project. So that's there. And then, as we know, we have from the Scottish Government the 0.768 million capital grant for play parks. And there are listed the play parks which already have been identified by the council. So all of that's probably already there. So we're not asking people to agree to something they haven't already been made aware of. So that is the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, who's your seconder, Councillor Clark?
Councillor AnnDowling.
Okay, if you just give me a wee minute, I just want to take some advice on that. But I'll bring Councillor Gillian Graham in just now anyway, while I'm speaking to Mark.
Thank you very much, Provost. It's a question on page 39. It's the overview of capital resources and proposed programme. At point 3.1, it states the updates to the capital programme outlined in this report focuses on 2025-26, and it refers to the extension to Parkmeads High School. And it says, brackets, supported by an assumed 18 million contribution from BAE Systems. Now, I've seen this come up a few times. I think I'm correct in thinking that it was May 23 at the Education Board. It was agreed that the BAE extension to Parkmeads High School. Now, at the time, we asked for a few weeks delay to earlier consideration of options appraisals before committing to millions of pounds of spend. However, it was voted down due to concerns about delaying the project. So I suppose I'm quite surprised and concerned that nearly 2 years later, we still don't seem to have confirmation of the level of investment by BAE. Now, I'm sure officers are working hard on this, but when will it be confirmed? And what happens if BAE don't contribute 18 million? Will the balance be found? Thank you.
Thanks, Provost. I think I've covered this a couple of times at previous meetings. The reason for the use of the word assumed is that the position that the council has adopted in our discussions with BAE is that there is a percentage that we are seeking in terms of the Section 75 contribution. We want to find the confirmed costs of the extension. So if the cost of the extension were to increase with inflationary pressures, as we've potentially seen in some capital projects, as members will be aware, we want BE to be contributing their share of that increase. So if we agree a figure with BE now, that's then locked. And therefore the council's bearing the entire risk of any increase going forward. So that is why we do not have a confirmed figure with BE at this time, because we don't want to confirm a figure until we know what the actual cost, full final cost of the extension is. We could seek to agree a figure now, but that would then mean that the council would be bearing the entire risk in relation to any additional costs which might accrue over the period of the project.
Can I come back? Thanks very much, Mark. I do understand that. I suppose really it's not necessarily the amount of money I'm thinking about. Has BAE agreed their percentage of whatever the amount's going to be? Because that's my understanding, is that they are supposed to commit to a certain percentage of the extension costs. Have they agreed that percentage?
Yeah, yes. In relation to the percentage, again, I think we've discussed this within the chamber. I think initially we had indicated to members that it would be 50% on the basis that their contribution is capped at a maximum number of children of 200, and the extension we were saying was being built for 400. They've come back and pointed out that technically, given the capacity, the existing capacity at the school is 1,591, that the actual increase is 409. So it's not exactly 50%, it's 48.9 or something like that. I don't have the exact figure to hand. So that figure has been agreed. We've accepted BE's position in respect of that.
Helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor AnnDowling, you're the seconder. I should have asked you to come in before Councillor Graham, so if you want to come in just now.
Thanks, Provost. I am happy to second this amendment, and I reserve the right to come back in later.
Okay. Councillor Ian Nicholson.
Thanks, Provost. I'm not sure if I'm the only one feeling this just now. As a member, the way Labour have approached this, I find quite disturbing, because I think every elected member is entitled to know and understand what, if this was agreed today, what would the impact of this be on other projects in the pipeline. And I understand all the play parks reference here already been announced in the system. So are they trying to just claim credit for those play parks? I think that's something it should be reprehensible. With regards to the first part of it, there's no case being put forward that I'm aware of or understand about Barshaw Park Pavilion as opposed to any other pavilion. And there's pavilions all around Renfrewshire. And I think to be fair to all elected members of this chamber, rather than this kind of smash and grab approach by Labour, I'm not saying no to this, but what I'm saying, I'm prepared to discuss it with the Labour group if that's a priority project for them, along with other members of this council who may have other ideas about the investment of that fund. And if we're directing that fund just now on the say-so or the will of Labour, what does that mean for other elected members being cut out of the picture here with projects and buildings and areas that might need to be considered? So like we all do with all these kind of projects, We'll look at the rationale behind it. We'll look at the request for it. And yes, we could look at funding it and get council support against it. But I'm just concerned about this approach. We don't know what the impact of that funding being directed towards a particular area is. There might be other buildings that are in better need, better condition, or worse condition. We don't know any information about this. So, Provost, that's my only concern about this amendment, is the way it's been approached, and it's excluded every other member in this chamber out of the rationale behind this spend. It's just what the Labour group thinks it should be spent on, without the consideration of other members at all to be involved in it. And I don't think that's the right approach, Provost. So I'm not accepting it on that basis. But what I'm saying to Labour group is, I see what you're saying here, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you, and then we'll make those decisions known to all elected members, and they can input into it. And if we all agree with it, we can agree with it. So we're not saying no to the ideas. It's the way you've done it. Thanks, Provost.
Okay, Provost,
Councillor Nicholson?
can I just reply to that?
No,
briefly?
well,
Just,
please keep it brief.
yes,
Councillor.
well, just to say, if Councillor Nicholson wishes to discuss how we distribute that fund as we go forward, and we can do that jointly, then I'm happy to withdraw the amendment.
Yeah.
And that would save
But
us
you do
time.
understand that allocation for these play parks has already been discussed?
Yeah, that money came from the Scottish Government. That was the list of play parks that goes through. So it was just there because that's the.
But I think some of your members know that these have already been announced. That's what I'm saying. Did you not know this?
Yes, but it is part of the budget procedure that they go
Okay.
forward. That's all. So it's withdrawn. So, but I'm glad that we can have a discussion about the priorities, and hopefully we can do something imaginative as we go forward.
Okay. All right. Well, that was a nice. Yes, of course. Yes. Yeah, and I'm sure the leader will organise a meeting for you all to discuss it. Now we did have another couple of people who wanted in on this debate, but are you happy to forgo your comments in light of what's just the agreement that's just taken place? Okay, thank you very much. So that's item 4, agreed, recommendations accepted. That brings us on to the housing revenue account, budget and rent levels 25 to 26, and housing capital investment plan 25-26 to 29-30. Councillor Marie McGurk.
Thanks very much, Provost. Thanks, members. I'm pleased to present this year's budget proposals for the housing revenue account. I'm sure that everyone will acknowledge the extremely challenging situation we have been experiencing over the last year, with pressures on our housing services, reflecting the increased demand for social housing we are seeing across the whole of Scotland, along with the ongoing financial pressures on the operating costs for our housing services. In recent years, we have worked hard to keep rents as affordable as possible, while continuing to deliver housing services and investment in our homes. In the past 3 years, while inflationary costs within the housing revenue account have risen considerably, we have sought to minimise the impact on our tenants' pockets by delivering lower than inflation rent increases during this period. The scale of our investment plans is detailed in the paper, with some £292 million of planned investment over the next 5 years. Our investment plans include the ambitious and large-scale housing regeneration programme, which will deliver improvements across 8 housing areas, as well as ongoing work to deliver improvements to energy efficiency investment in our multi-storey flat blocks and kitchen, bathroom, heating and window and door replacements to some of our homes. This year has been marked by the ongoing migration and asylum provision in Renfrewshire, supporting people who have come to live and settle in the area through different humanitarian programmes. Our housing and homeless teams have been at the centre of the Council's response, and I'm extremely proud of the work of the teams across the Council who have supported this effort. We are acutely aware of the pressure on the housing system from local people in housing need, those who are homeless, as well as the pressures for those escaping conflict in their home countries. In this context, our investment in new council homes and working with our housing association partners in delivery of the Strategic Housing Investment Plan continues to be very important. Members will note that our plans include 70 new built homes for the Howard Road area in Johnstone and 65 new built homes in Gala Hill. And I'm pleased to report that both developments are scheduled to start on the site very soon. Further new build council homes are planned over the course of the next 5 years, including developments in Springbank, Thrushcraigs, Foxbar and Fergusley Brimlands. These developments build on the success of recent years, which have seen over 320 new council homes in Bishopton, Johnstone and Fergusley Park in Paisley. As convener, I'm extremely proud of the work we have been doing to provide new homes that are modern, energy efficient and spacious, which have strengthened communities and created welcoming places to live. It would be remiss not to mention some of the challenges we have faced through the year. Members may recall that last year I highlighted void properties as a priority area for improvement, and I'm pleased to note that significant progress has been made in reducing both the number of void properties and the time taken to repair them ready for let. The delivery of an efficient housing repairs and maintenance service is important to all our tenants, and this is supported with £20 million in this year's budget. As I mentioned in my introductory comments, this has been a year full of challenges and pressure on the housing revenue account. It is with this in mind that we seek to ensure the long-term stability of the housing revenue account with the implementation of a multi-year rent strategy for the 3-year period from 2025-26 to 2027-28. to ensure our ambitious investment regeneration and new build plans are delivered. This year, our consultation with tenants proposed 2 options of a multi-year strategy for their consideration. 1,031 tenants took part in the consultation, with 69% of those taking part opting for option 1 as set out in the report. As the paper outlines, I am proposing a 3-year rent strategy with a 7.5 rent increase in 2025-26, 7.5 rent increase in 2026-27, and a 7% rent increase in 2027-28, which reflects the outcome of our consultation with tenants. During 2024, we surveyed 1,200 tenants who told us they wanted to see investment in their homes and improvements to the neighbourhood where they live in, as well as delivering £147 million of investment in housing stock, including over £34 million of investment planned during the course of 2025-26. This rent strategy will also deliver new additional services for our tenants. It will allow us to double the number of neighbourhood environment teams from 2 to 4, meaning each of our 4 local area housing teams will have a dedicated team to carry out environmental works to the grounds and areas around our tenants' homes. In addition, the paper outlines the introduction of a You Decide tenant fund, which will set aside £600,000 over the course of the next 3 years for tenants to be involved in deciding how this funding will be spent. Setting on a rent strategy has been a difficult decision for the administration, as we are very conscious of the difficult financial circumstances that face many of our tenants in the context of the cost of living crisis. We know that for almost 76% of our tenants, the impact of the rent increase will be met by housing benefit. For those tenants who will pay the increased rent, the Tenant Support Fund, which was put in place 2 years ago to provide financial assistance to those tenants who are facing hardship as a consequence of the rent increase, will continue again this year. The additional advice works that were put in place to work with housing teams to provide proactive support to tenants who are struggling to pay their rent will also continue this year. Between April 2024 and January this year, 5,783 income advice cases involved households from the council tenancies. And this vital service has meant that these households have been supported to access £7.9 million of additional assistance. Members, I believe that the recommendations in the report are sound. They will help maintain the financial health of the housing revenue account, keep average rent increases at £7.15 per week, provide a mechanism to support tenants who are struggling to pay their rent as a result of the cost of living crisis, and importantly, will keep our ambitious plans for investment in our council housing stock on track. I hope you will support the recommendations as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGirt. Who's your seconder?
Councillor Innes.
Councillor Innes.
Thanks, Provost. I deserve my right to come in and formally second the motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Do we have any amendments? Councillor McCulloch, do you have an amendment?
I've no amendment, Provost, but I would like to speak to the motion.
Yeah, that's
possible.
fine.
Thanks.
Do we have any amendments? No? Okay, Councillor McCulloch.
Thanks, Provost.
Can
Provost,
I just say before you start,
Yeah.
it looks like we won't need a recess if there are no amendments, so we'll just carry on. Okay?
that is good news.
Thought you'd like to hear that.
I did like that.
Okay.
Provost, when we set our rents for our council tenants, we went into a bargain. I think that's key to point out. They pay the rent so we can provide the good quality, affordable homes and housing services for those in need. And in a backdrop of an ongoing squeeze in the cost of living, a rent increase or indeed any increase, council tax, whatever, is an unwelcome additional burden on already strained household incomes. I won't have been alone in worrying about the rent increase consultation when it was presented back in December that showed the proposed level of increases being well above the current rate of inflation. And I think Councillor McGirt mentioned the tenant support fund, and that need to be acutely focused at that 24% that don't receive housing support costs. They'll need to be the main focus of that fund as well. However, from the consultation, we do know that the tenants do value the services that we provide, and I think that our council housing team in general does a very good job. They've expressed a desire for a significant investment in their homes, and they wish to get more involved in local decision making on their neighbourhoods and their communities. And in particular, the You Decide Fund for Tenants is a very welcome addition that will improve the local environment in areas in sore need of investment. And I'm sure that our tenants will welcome the increased capacity to deliver those improvements. Like our tenants, Renfrewshire Labour does welcome the proposed significant investment in pushing the energy efficiency standards up in our council homes. We want our homes to be as energy efficient as possible, so the energy bills of those that are most vulnerable in our society are as affordable as possible. We also know from the tenant satisfaction survey that there's more to be done to improve those services to the standards that our tenants expect. And improvements to our repair service are ongoing but sorely needed. And there won't be a councillor in this chamber that hasn't had their inbox filled with complaints about repairs or the dreaded and worrying reports of damp mould in homes. And hopefully that this increased investment in services will allow us to resolve these issues decisively. We also know of empty council homes across Renfrewshire that are taking quite a while to get ready for new tenants. And in an age of a national housing emergency, it's an all-time high. We've got to do better, I think, as a council, making the best use of our available homes and get these empty homes back into use as soon as possible for those in greatest need. Homelessness is a real concern, and the suspension of the local connection criteria in applications makes it difficult for this council housing service, homelessness service, and others across Scotland to manage their caseloads. And I would appeal to the Scottish Government to look at that decision again. We do welcome the continued investment in new build housing across Renfrewshire. And again, that's an area of policy that I think gets cross-chamber support. A rare convergence in this day, I must add. Like all members, I just wish we could get more of it built more quickly. And I know the convener shares that view, and particularly in the West Renfrewshire villages, which I know Councillor Innes has mentioned in the past. The proposed increases to rent clearly reflect the effects of the low increases we've had these past few years. And that's led to a position where we have to deliver these services and require higher rents to do so. And whilst any increase of any sort will not be popular, our tenants are given support to this 3-year deal in rents. The forecasted deficit in the papers is a bit of a worry, and the mentions of contingency changes for that also worries me as well. So I think we would have to stick to this 3-year strategy unless the unthinkable happens. So that's something we'll definitely look at in the chamber, I'm sure. The tenants have agreed to these increases so that council can press ahead with the necessary improvements and investments that I think we can all get behind. It is clear we cannot deliver these investments without the funding. Our tenants will expect to see a return on this investment, from things like repairs to also the new kitchens, to common areas and backcourts in return. And it'll be us and the Communities and Housing Board to make sure that our tenants get best value for the increased rents they're going to pay. And I'm sure our housing team will rise to this challenge and deliver for Renfrewshire Council tenants. So on that note, the Renfrewshire Labour Group accepts the motion from Councillor McGurk on the budget, the rent levels and the housing capital investment plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Andy Doig.
Thanks, Provost. I welcome the investment in housing. It's really important. It's a specific plea that I have, Provost, in relation to asking Councillor McGurk. I very much welcome, particularly the increased investment in high-rise flats. And I want to put a plea in for the Provost and Provost Close tenants and residents in Johnstone. There's desperate need to get some of the communal areas in Provost Close upgraded, Provost. So I really hope that Councillor McGurk will turn their attentions to that in due course, and I'll email her after the meeting. We can talk about that. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Councillor Doig. Councillor Ian McMillan.
Where is it? Sorry.
Aye, thank you very much. Those of us that are on the Housing Policy Board, you'll know that the members of that policy board, again, like our budget responsibilities, take that very serious. I've always been of the view that the three most important things in the council are health, education and housing. I've always thought that, and there's nothing to change my mind on that. People need a warm, dry home to feel comfortable in, and that's a basic human need. So although I accept that the rises are a bit higher, but the investment is needed. A lot of our houses are getting past their sell-by date, and it's hard to believe. And I think areas in the ward that I represent, in Speightson and in Corsford, the houses are getting towards 60-year-old now. Which I can remember when some of them were being built. So that will be replicated throughout the whole area, I'm sure. And of course, we need new housing, and again, in the ward that I cover, and one of the councillors there, we have been fairly lucky. The number of houses, there's houses getting built at the moment in Johnstone Castle, which people are waiting desperately to move into. And of course, as a convener mentioned, the housing in the Howard Road area will make such a big difference to that area, that area's 90-year-old houses there, so they're desperately in need of modern houses. I particularly welcome the £600,000 for You Decide, and it's like a lot of things in life. If you stick around long enough, you'll see the same things coming round again. And remember, this used to be called the Neighbourhood Forum money. So I'm not that bothered what anybody calls it. I think it's important that tenants have a say in how their money is spent in their area, so I would certainly welcome that. And I know the Scottish budget was just passed this week, and I know there was a commitment for money for new housing, and the Labour government in London has also got a similar commitment as well, and hopefully some extra money will find its way up here as well for new build houses. As I say, I think we've got a decent record here. Not a great record, but a decent record here of providing new homes. And like any other initiative, we could always do better. So I hope over the next few years to carry on the work of the Housing Policy Board and providing more homes and decent homes for our tenants here in Renfrewshire, both council and other social landlords. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McMillan. Councillor Eddie Devine.
Thanks, Provost. Obviously welcome the money that's going into our housing. Like other councillors, it's a hell of a lot of money we're asking people to pay in the next 3 years when it eventually gets there. Could I just make a plea to Councillor McGurk that we use our workforce, our own workforce, rather than having to rely on overpriced, in my opinion, contractors?
Yeah, I'm sure she'll take that on board. Thanks, Councillor Devine. Councillor James McLaren.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I can, James. Much
Yes.
much better than earlier.
Okay, I'll keep trying. How is that? Is that better? Okay,
Well,
can you hear me
Yes,
now?
Councillor McLaren, you can go ahead.
Super, thank you. Thank you, Provost. I'd like to take the opportunity to ask for an increase in funding for tenants and residents associations. These tenants associations can be a big benefit to the area that they exist in. And Bridgeway Tower in particular is currently struggling to exist on their existing funding, and it would be a huge loss to the village if it folds. So, Provost, I'd like to ask perhaps the methods of calculating the amount of funding for these tenants and residents associations needs to be reviewed, particularly for Bridge of Weir. I hope you got
Councillor
that okay.
McLaren, could I ask you to clarify what type of funding they're struggling with? I'm not sure what you mean, because they don't actually have a budget to spend. I don't think the tenants associations. Is it expenses you mean?
Their expenses, yes. They're struggling to meet their expenses currently.
Okay.
They are allocated funding, and
Okay.
I think the way the funding is calculated needs to be reviewed because it's not working for Bridge of Weir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll ask Councillor McGurk to maybe cover that in her summing up. And if she can't give you an answer today, I will ask her to get back to you and the other members of the council. Is that okay?
Sounds good to me. Thank you, Provost.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McLaren. Councillor Neil Graham.
Thanks, Provost. Just first of all, on item 5.2 on the tenant consultation, it's got two options, but both say option 1. So it's just maybe for the to change that on the minutes. I would just like to ask, what was the turnout of the tenant consultation? How many consultations were sent out? I think just to get over 1,000 responses would say to me that the tenants were unhappy with the two options presented. To say that this option is what the tenants wanted may not be true. I know quite a few people who never took part in the survey because they were very unhappy with the two options presented. To just ask, what do you want, a 7.5% or 8% rise? I don't think it's a proper option for them. I do, however, note that we need investment into our council homes, and I hope that we see a return in the investment that our tenants are paying for. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Graham. I have no other hands up, so I'm going to ask Councillor Innes if he wants to. Councillor Graham?
I'd asked the question about we just got over 1,000 responses. So how many surveys were sent out? Because it seems a very low.
I'll let the councillor address that in her summing up.
Okay,
that's okay. Excuse me. Councillor Innes, you reserved your right as seconder to come in. Do you want to come in just now before I bring Councillor McGurk back in to sum up?
No, that's fine, Provost. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor McGurk.
Thanks very much, Provost, and thanks very much for your comments, members, and also your questions. Appreciate that today. It's a long process with the housing revenue account, working with the tenants. There's quite a few. All tenants would have been notified of the potential of what we're considering for the rent this time, and they all have an option to come back or even come along to the tenants forum, which they did. There's quite a few at that meeting, and I attended it as well. The main issue was the investment for all the tenants. Every single one of them said to me, we want more investment in our homes. We want them to be more modern, more affordable, and we're happy to accept this. They don't love having to pay a higher rent. None of us do. But they could see the fact that they were going to get the investment, and they've already experienced from other tenants in other areas the investment that we have put forward. and they want the same. And it was as simple as that. With regards to some of the residents, tenants not being happy about the increase, I had 2 letters myself from about one area, but I wasn't aware, no other members have written to me to say that they're not happy about this. And when we presented the information to the Community and Housing Board, whilst all the members, even those who spoke today, were a wee bit concerned about it, but they could understand why we were doing it. And a lot of it was due to the increase of costs that have come in all of a sudden after COVID. So, you know, whilst yes, I would love to have put the rents a lot lower, but I made a commitment to all tenants that while my tenure was here, I would make sure they have as many as possible would have new properties or better facilities within their houses and their areas. Now, Councillor, some of the councillors were asking about, can they have more of a say? They do. They have a say, and they have an opportunity to air their views as often as possible, both at the local area committees and with the local housing teams. But I will take these things on board, and I'll bring back to the Communities and Housing Policy Board a framework to let them see how that is actually done. So you've got more of a hands-on information to be able to verify some of the issues that have been raised here today. But as I say, going forward, I think we're going to have lovely new homes for our tenants, and if I could build them all in the next 3 years, I certainly would. You know that. You know that. What's that? What's that? What's that? What's that?
Somebody please put your mic on.
Anyway, can I just thank you all for your help, for your support today, and I will take everything on board and make sure that we deliver excellent quality homes for our tenants.
Thank you, Councillor McGirt. We had 2 Maries in the house there speaking. I don't know whether, do you want me to ask Louise Feely to give you more information on the actual mechanics of the survey?
No, it was just obviously we've got over 12,000 council houses and only 1,000, just over 1,000 responded. So that's a very low turnout. So it's maybe to look at why it was such a low turnout and try and get more people involved. Even a third option.
We have Louise here, the Head of Housing. So maybe Louise, do you want to come in and comment on that? It might be helpful for all of the councillors to hear.
Thanks, Provost, and thank you, Councillor, for your question. We do have slightly over 12,000 properties, but a number of them are empty, and we also have some of them scheduled for demolition at the moment in terms of our regeneration programmes. So in percentage terms, the 1,031 tenants that responded to the consultation process is almost 11% of our tenants. So it is a kind of statistically valid percentage that have responded to the consultation. Like you, I would like to see more tenants reply to our consultation correspondence, and that's something that we're certainly looking at moving forward, about how we can engage more broadly with our tenant groups, not just the tenant and resident associations, but the wider tenant audience as well. So it's certainly something that as officers we're keen to improve on as well.
It may be that because they see there's going to be more investment made in their houses, that they engage more with the process. So let's keep our fingers crossed that happens. But I'm sure the housing staff will do all they can to make that engagement. James McLaren, I see you've got your hand up, but I've already allowed Councillor McGirt to sum up, so I'm not allowing any more speakers. I'm sorry.
Could we ask Louise Feely to comment about the funding for tenants and residents associations?
No, well, that's something that, I mean, we need more information, we need more specifics. So I think Louise, if I ask Louise today to get back to the councillors with more information on that, then I think that perhaps would fulfil your ask today, James.
I think that would be helpful, yes, thank you.
It would be helpful for me too, because I'm not sure of what funding the tenants associations have to spend. So I would like to know more about that, Louise. So yeah. Would you do that for us? You don't need to do it just now. No, you can get back to us.
No, that's fine, Provost. And just to reassure yourself and Councillor McLaren, we're actually already doing some work with our tenant scrutiny panel, looking at the TRA arrangements, including the funding arrangements. So absolutely happy to bring something back on that.
That's great. Thank you so much. And thank you for your comments. So that the budget and investment plan agreed. That was item 5. Agreed. Thank you very much. That moves on to item 6, which is the Scottish Local Authorities Remuneration Committee and Councillors' Remuneration. Do you have any comments or questions? Councillor. Councillor.
It was just I forget what the point it was, but there was 2 points on the report, and it said on one of them that it says that the leader of the council will get 50,000, and the next one it said 37. It was just to clarify which one it was.
Okay. I'll ask. In fact, yeah, I thought James McLaren wanted, but he doesn't. Okay, I'll ask Mark Conahan to clarify that for you, Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Provost. The council leader is a specific post, and within the regulations there is a specific figure set for that. So the new regulation sets the figure for the leader of the council is set out in paragraph 3.6. £50,063. The other figure that's mentioned is a maximum level of remuneration that's set for senior councillors. But as I set out in paragraph 3.8, as well as setting a maximum amount for senior council allowances, there's also a limit set on the number of senior councillors you can have and a maximum budget that the council can spend on senior councillors, which means that you cannot pay the full number of senior councillors the maximum allowance. That would then exceed the budget. So that's a calculation and a balance that has to be done every at the start of every council term. Renfrewshire could have 14 senior councillors as a maximum. The decision that was made in 2022 was that we would have 13, which then means that you cannot actually reach that maximum figure of an individual payment to a senior councillor, which is why there are a set of figures proposed as the appendix at the end of the report. Hope that helps.
Does that help you, Councillor Graham? Yeah. Hey, Councillor Andy Steele? Okay. Okay, we have no other hands up. Can we agree the report, please? Great. Item 7, Commissioner for Ethical Standards in Public Life in Scotland, Annual Report 2023 to 24. And Councillor McMillan.
No disagreement or anything in the report, but just I'm assuming it's a typing error at 5.1, type of complaint, third from the bottom. I'm not even going to attempt to say it, so.
Yes.
I've got a note to bring Mark in to explain the gibberish on the page.
Yes.
Yeah.
So can you just tell us what it actually means?
And pronounce it.
Financial mismanagement. I'm not going to pronounce what is actually typed there. We're not entirely sure how that crept into the report. Sorry.
Misconduct.
Financial misconduct.
It looks like a question from the 1% Club.
Yes. I was trying to figure out whether it was some obscure Eastern European language that we had chosen to put in rather than, but we don't know whether it was a mistype or something that get carried over in the formatting, but it's financial management.
Very well spotted. There's only one other person, as far as I know, that spotted that. So well done, Ian. You are a member of the 2% Club. Okay, thank you for that. So we agree the reports. Okay, now that brings us on to the motions, and what I am intending doing is hearing the WASPI motion first. That is on our agenda as motion 3, because you know we have a representation from the WASPI women in the building today. So that will allow them to hear that and then leave. You don't have to leave. You can stay for the entire meeting, but it means that you'll be able to get away if you want to go. I've got a feeling you will.
2 amendments.
Okay, so we're going to hear that motion just now. So that is going to become motion 1 for the purposes of the minute of today's meeting, okay? And that's Councillors McMillan and AnnDowling. And as far as I'm aware, we have 2 amendments to the motion. Okay, have the amendments been distributed? Okay. Just bear with me for a second. Yeah, it's there. What's there? It's not there.
Not saying it's spirit. I never.
Right, okay. Okay, okay. Yeah, I think I can't. Yeah, okay. We can send them round, Elaine. Do the movers of the amendments have any hard copies, any physical copies of the motion with them today? No, it's just so that the public could see the amendments. It's just coming, Andy. It's just getting sent to you. Don't worry, I'll give you time to read it.
I can just say to Councillor Doig that Provost had to see the amendments first, so she could consider the competency, so they're only just been circulated.
In the order they were received, yeah. So it looks to me as if the amendments are competent anyway, so we'll just crack on with them, but I just want the members to be able to see them before we start. See, I feel as if that's a bit of an issue when the public can't see the amendments. It's okay when it's just the public can't see the amendments.
No.
Okay. As we don't have physical copies of the amendments in the room today, for the sake of the members of the public who are here in the gallery, could you read out your amendment to the motion at the beginning, please? Okay, don't just speak to your amendment, please read it so that everyone can hear it. Okay? Ian.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't be accepting either of the amendments. I'm quite happy to go with the Labour Group's motion. So I'll just read this out. Council notes the recent decision by the UK Government not to pay WASPI women compensation due to the severe strain on the UK economy and national finances following 14 years of Conservative government. Council reaffirms its support for the WASPI campaign and believes that this decision should be reconsidered. Women impacted by previous UK government failure to adequately warn them about changes to the state pension who have been financially disadvantaged should be compensated in line with the PHSO report and recommendations. Now, I think most of us in this room know the background to this situation, and well done to the WASPI women who over many years have kept this campaign alive. It'd be easy to be disillusioned and walk away. People move on to other things. Unfortunately, some people have passed away. So it's easy just to kind of get on with your life and forget about it. But they haven't. And we've seen even as recently as a couple of days ago about the move to legal action and a number of people who have signed the petition. So it's very much a live issue. So we all kind of know that the background that the Conservative government kind of moved the goalposts in terms of pension age for women. So to cut a long story short, we eventually ended up with the Ombudsman report last March. Now, the Conservatives were obviously in their dying days of their government and never done anything about it. So I think there was expectations that any new government, regardless of what party actually won the election, would do something about it. And as we all know, British public returned a Labour government in July. So there certainly was high expectations. Now, it wasn't mentioned in the Labour Party manifesto they would be doing it, but I think, as I say, there was an expectation. And I'm not going to kid on that senior Labour politicians didn't throw themselves behind the WASPI campaign, because they did. We all know that. There's photographic evidence, video evidence, all the rest of it. So, you know, we've all seen that. So, obviously, the Labour Party or the Labour government in Westminster have said that because of the financial situation, it's impossible to pay. Now, I understand, I think we all understand, given the conversations we've had in the last few hours about the dire financial situation. But I don't think any of the WASPI women were expecting to get paid the next day, any of the compensation that they were due. And there are ways and means of paying this compensation, whether it's over a number of years or making some tax adjustment. I'm not going to get into the technicalities of that because it's a bit beyond me, but I think there is ways and means of paying back some of this money. I think the Ombudsman certainly recognised that mistakes had been made, communications were poor, leading to people being confused of what's going on and not really getting a lot of time to make any real adjustments to their income to provide a secure financial background for them and their families when they actually retired, or what they call it, their retirement pension. And I think we need to remember the age group of these women, born in the 1950s, probably raised children in the 70s, early 80s, where there wasn't maybe the same opportunities for women to earn decent wages. There wasn't certainly opportunities to get childcare. And an awful lot of women at that particular time took career breaks, and that obviously long-term impacted a lot of their wages potential. So they weren't always getting the full pension that some people do enjoy. Now, the Ombudsman has made it quite clear that this compensation should be paid. The Labour government have chosen to ignore that. So it kind of begs the question, what's the point of having an Ombudsman if you're just going to ignore their findings? As we know very much, the Ombudsman can be the last port of call for looking for some sort of support. So I am not happy that they just totally disregarded the Ombudsman, and I'm sure people should be and will be fully made accountable for their actions. So we recognise that the WASPI women were treated badly. We recognise that the Ombudsman said they should get compensation. So this motion is asking for the UK government to reconsider their decision and pay money that is morally and rightfully due to these women. So, and we would also like to, in the Labour group, and hopefully the council will align themselves with the WASPI women's cause. Now, I don't know how the vote's going to go. We'll wait and see. But to me, that's almost irrelevant. The relevant thing for me is this is still on the agenda. There's still parties in here in Renfrewshire are supportive of the campaign. And no matter, as I say, what happens with the vote, I think anybody that's watching this, who's in the chambers or watching it on the screen or whatever, can be rest assured that the vast majority of people in here support their just campaign. Thank you.
Councillor AnnDowling.
I am very happy to second the motion, but I would like to come back and reserve that right.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have two amendments. So we've got one from the Conservative group, Councillor Neil Graham and Councillor David McGonigal. One from the SNP group, which is the mover is Jacqueline Cameron and seconder is Marie McGurk. So we'll take the amendments first before we allow any other speakers to come in. Councillor Neil Graham, your first amendment to be accepted.
Thanks, Provost. I'll read it out. Council notes the recent decision by the Labour government not to pay WASPI women compensation, despite Keir Starmer saying he supported WASPI women when in opposition. Council calls on the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, to fully compensate women who have been financially disadvantaged in line with PHSO report and recommendations. Council notes that all three members of Parliament that cover Renfrewshire, Alison Taylor MP, Joanna Baxter MP and Martin McCluskey MP, did not vote to compensate WASPI women. Council further agrees to write to the above-mentioned MPs' offices to request a full explanation as to why they did not vote to compensate the women affected. That's the end of the amendment. I was not surprised to see this motion come to Council. I was, however, surprised to see it was Councillor AnnDowling and McMillan, Labour representatives, bringing it to full Council. Considering that it was Councillor AnnDowling, along with our many Labour colleagues, that have demanded justice for WASPI women. We have seen many motions here in this Council demanding justice for WASPI women and deriding the Conservative government for not doing enough. Would Councillor AnnDowling and Councillor McMillan have been satisfied if the Conservative government said there was no money to pay for this injustice? Of course, they would not have accepted this. Now that we have a Labour government with a huge mandate to do as they please, they have clearly decided that this injustice doesn't mean all that much to them. They can increase defence spending by £6 billion on a whim just to please Donald Trump. They can set up net zero quangos and their Jobs for Pals scheme on six-figure salaries, but somehow have no money for this injustice that many Labour Party elected members and candidates have campaigned on for years. Not only are Labour not going to pay WASPI women, you've also taken away their winter fuel payment, a double whammy for WASPI women. And Councillor McMillan, you'd said in your motion that your motion was to ask the UK government to pay WASPI women. It doesn't, from what I can see, it only notes their decision. So it's not asking the UK government to pay. Hypocrisy at its finest on show by the Labour Party. All talk in opposition, no action when in government. Same old Labour, shafting the country with their warring farmers, hard-working law-abiding citizens, while the champagne socialists in the city think up ways to hide the tax burden on ordinary people with their tax hikes and university politics. The Labour Party and government, get your colleagues to do their job. Money is there for WASPI women should Labour wish. This is a political choice, and your party has chosen to spend money on what they see as more worthy causes. Government is about choices, and Labour have turned their backs on a promise. They now must accept this and at least be open about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor David McGonigal.
Yes, I firmly second and reserve the right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The SNP amendment comes from Jacqueline Cameron and Marie McGurk. Jacqueline, and could you remember to read out your amendment?
I will.
So everyone can hear.
Sorry, I will, Provost. I'll read it out and then I'll come on to explain later. So I've replaced the first line and changed it to Council strongly disagrees with the recent decision by the UK Labour government not to pay WASPI women compensation, and delete the line due to the severe strain in the UK economy and national finances following 14 years of Conservative government, but leave the second paragraph as is. So we're going to talk about my amendment. Thank you. Okay. So at the last full council, I did lay the gauntlet down to the Labour Party to say to them, stand up for what you believe in, even if it goes against party policy. So I'm genuinely pleased that they've taken me up on that offer. I have to say I was surprised that they brought a motion that's gone directly against their own party, but I think it's really brave. And I do admire them for standing up and putting their head above the parapet. But the reason I amended
the motion is because I think it's a wee bit weak and apologetic. I think if it was a motion to the Scottish Government, it would be a lot stronger worded. So I'm going to fix it for you. So that's why so that's why I've decided to say strongly disagrees rather than just notes, because we do strongly disagree with it. Also, let's not hide behind the UK government. It's a UK Labour government, and we need to be clear about that. I took the bit about blaming the Tories out, not because we haven't suffered 14 years of austerity at the hands of the Tories, and not that they haven't trashed the economy, but I think that's simply an excuse, to be honest, because what Labour promised at the election was change. That one word, change, that won you the election. It won you the swathe of MPs, Labour MPs, that we have now up here in Scotland. But there's been no change for the WASPI women, no change whatsoever. And I disagree with your point, Councillor McMillan, that they can wait to be paid. We've said before in this chamber that a WASPI woman dies every 13 minutes. So they can't wait any longer. They need their payment now. So another word that begins with CH is choice. So I don't agree that the Labour government didn't have a choice. They've chosen to target the people that they've chosen. They could have chosen the people with the broadest shoulders. They could have looked elsewhere, but instead they're targeting pensioners, struggling families, the public sector, the care sector, and WASPI women. So Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are completely unapologetic about that. So that change that they promised has never happened, and it's certainly not happened for the WASPI women. Now, I understand locally what your views are, and I appreciate that, and that's why I do understand why you've brought this motion today, and we do agree. But the sad fact for Scottish Labour is UK Labour are not listening, and there's no change for Scotland under a UK Labour government, and no change again for the WASPI women. But I hope that every Labour parliamentarian follows your lead and puts that pressure on Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves and lets them know that we think this is completely unjust, what's happening to the WASPI women, and that they should cough up, pay out and give the WASPI women the justice they deserve. Thanks, Provost.
Councillor McGurk.
Thanks, Provost. I second the motion, reserve my right to come back in. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Eddie Devine.
Thanks, Provost. I must say, when I got these motions, I had to read it twice to see if it was a joke from the Labour Party. This is quite clearly coming from Holyrood, because they're trying to dig themselves out a hole for the election that might be coming next year. Labour have found billions of pounds so they can have a war and kill people. Okay, that's what they do all the time. Let's have a war and take everybody's notion or attention away from what's happening at home. But they can't. They say they can't afford to pay WASPI women. Well, I said to WASPI women when I met them, I will stand by that, and I'm not going to change my principles. They might, but I won't. WASPI women should be paid. There is no justifiable reason not to pay them. But it's quite simple. Tax the rich. Why keep taking? Somebody mentioned earlier on, they've done in the winter fuel payment. Why not tax the rich? There's billions of pounds there that can be brought in, and a one-off. In fact, I'd basically tax them all the time because they can afford it. They can afford it. WASPI women can't wait. Somebody said that what the death rate was. That cannot go on. These women, and I must say, my wife is one of them. These women deserve the money that they should get. There is no justifiable reason for anybody not to pay the money. Labour need to come up with something better than this, because quite frankly, I know the WASPI women clapped them, but they can see through this. It's a smokescreen. Stand up for yourself. Tell Sarwar to get his money where his mouth is, and tell them they'll pay the Scottish WASPI women. Thanks, Provost.
Councillor Devine. Councillor Ian Nicholson.
Thanks, Provost. All the comments I was going to make have already been made. Our amendment, I mean, if you go to the Labour motion, it's quite clear if that had been written in another way, which truly reflected what they wanted was the view of this council, they've written it differently. It was written on behalf of our Labour MPs. It was to provide an excuse for them. It was to provide Labour a bit of distance between what the wee Labour government's doing in London and them locally. But then all the photos that are out there showing them supporting the WASPI women, all the promises that were made were never fulfilled. Now, if they'd written it differently, if they didn't blame the previous UK government, they're in power in London. The decision not to fund the WASPI women was done by your Labour government. This idea you keep blaming the last government for everything. How long are you going to keep that going? For 2 years, 3 years or whatever? So at the end of the day, this council was fully supporting the WASPI women in their campaign. But the Labour group came along here today to make an excuse for it. Not actually a wholesome, fulsome support for WASPI, uncaveated or anything. They tried to mix it up into their interests, their political interests and what they want to be seen as. And that's failed today. Because our amendment today was to try and tidy that up into an actual motion that the council again reiterates its support for the WASPI women. Now, I nearly drew my breath in when Councillor McMillan, I thought he was going to say, what's the point of a Labour government? Because that's the first thing that came into my head on this particular issue. And again, I'll quickly go on to the point where my colleague made about choices. Have you got anything to say about 600 to £1 billion to make Manchester United football stadium? Anything to say about that? We won't support WASPI, but we can fund a football stadium. How's about your choices where you starve the foreign aid funds so that children die of starvation, so you can buy tanks? That's your Labour government in there just now. He's all happy about that as well. So you need to think hard and long about what kind of Labour Party you think you're in. Because the one I remember doesn't exist anymore. The Labour Party that used to exist for the working people in this country does not exist. And that includes the WASPI women. Because these people were denied their actual due entitlement due to UK governments dragging their feet over it. And this isn't the first time UK governments decided to sort of kill off the pensions in this country by dragging it out, and then they don't get their entitlement. You know, it's the same with other conditions that people get through blood transfusions and all the rest of it. They have to, why do they always have to spend years and years and years and years fighting the UK government for due compensation? What's the mentality in Westminster? And that's what they think they need to do. You know, people infected by blood transfusions and all that, it takes them 15 years and half the population that's infected by it have died off by that point. So again, we're just saying to this council, we want to reiterate our support for the WASPI women. The Labour group here are perfectly entitled to take their view on it, but we don't accept it because your motion is trying to excuse your Labour government from doing the right thing, and we're not accepting that either. So I hope everybody in this chamber accepts your amendment to this motion, and we can reiterate to the WASPI women we're fully behind them and we're supportive of them. And that equally applies if it's the same issue as the Scottish Government. I would say that right now as well. So thanks, Provost, for your time.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Andy Steele.
Thank you, Provost. If I would like to draw the Council's attention, colleagues' attention to an announcement the UK Government has made. It didn't get a lot of notice, but it does relate to this issue, so I apologise if it sounds like I'm going down a side avenue here, but it does relate to the issue that these ladies at the back are here to represent, and it's the issue of minors' pensions. This is going back into ancient history, but when the National Coal Board was nationalised, I wish, privatised back in 1994, an agreement was struck between the government of the day, I think it was John Major's government, believe it or not, and the pension fund operators, that the government would provide a backfill, a backstop to the pension fund so they could speculate, they could invest far more speculatively, because if they made any losses, the government would make good those losses. I don't have any problem with that. It's done fabulously well for the miners, and their pensions have done very, very well out of it. The quid pro quo was when they returned the surplus in their pension fund, some of that money would be paid back into the UK government treasury. Everybody's a winner, frankly. The announcement that's been made, and I've worked for 30 years, the announcement has been made is that the money which was paid back into the treasury from the surplus in the fund was a historic injustice, and that it should be paid back to the miners. You see where we're getting towards the WASPI thing here? It hasn't had to wait. It has been done. It has been paid. 1.5 billion has been put straight into that fund for the miners, and they're going to get a 30% uplift in their pension. Again, I don't have a problem with that. It's great. But we cannot sit here and say it can't be done quickly, it can't be done now. It could have been done yesterday. That's the thing that sticks in my craw. If you can find it for one group of people, why can't you find it for everybody? If something's unfair for somebody, why isn't it unfair for everybody? That's what really sticks in my craw. I always try to be dry and not lose my temper, but I always end up doing it just the same because it is basically unfair. That's what it boils down to. It's no rocket science. Everybody knows it's unfair. The Ombudsman said it was unfair. Just get on and pay it.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Michelle Campbell.
Thank you very much, Provost. Well, I can partially answer Councillor Steele's slight question there, which is men. Men get justice before women. It's as simple as that. A situation that involves women and injustice, it is pitting one against the other. It's about smoke and mirrors, and it's about deflection, so that people who are put into those positions of power feel that it's reasonable for them to say, we are very sorry, we have looked at, we've made representations to try. Well, try harder. Try harder. Don't talk about change and then fall at the first hurdle. This, and I will be political in some respect, apolitically. This is about the Westminster system and that the House will always win. That is the system. It doesn't matter who sits as the Prime Minister, doesn't matter which colour of party is sitting on the government bench. It is set up so that the UK government and the institution that is and everything that goes with it is the survivor and the biggest bearer of the win. It's as simple as that. And at the moment, I'm glad that these women are continuing with their tenacity to say, no, we're not being quiet about it. It's not just about making people feel awkward who are in those elected positions. It's about action that is required. And misogyny and inequality is rife around this whole thing, and no one is talking about it. So it's not just about talking about, oh, well, it's really terrible that that government's done that. And talking about economics is very important, but why are we not talking about the misogyny and inequality that this all sort of centres around as well? You know, so we're talking about shafting the country. It's shafting over 50% of the population, which is women. And every young woman, every woman of my age and any women beyond that, please don't kill me for saying that in that way. We all need to stand strong, because I guarantee we're all facing, we're all hit because of the fight that these women are making. If people of my generation or others think that they're not going to have to deal with some fight of this variety, if we don't stand strong with these women, we're going to be sadly mistaken and regretting that we're not actually standing hard. So I do specifically say to, in particular, the females that we have that are in the party of government, in the MP group, they need to be putting that pressure. And I don't care how many times they're disciplined, because I would have more respect for them standing up for what they actually damn well believe in. I'm willing to do it. I know people in this chamber are willing to do it, but where is their principle on this? Because it's not enough that we are just talking about it anymore. They are making decisions. It is about choice. Councillor Nicholson made a really good example of that. I resonate strongly with his viewpoints. We talk about political disengagement, and this is why we're seeing the far right get a narrative, because we need to stand fast and strong on this, because they're going to fill that narrative if we don't. So let's pull it together and get on with the job. Thank you.
I find that hard to argue with, Michelle. Councillor Andy Doig.
Right, thanks, Provost. Councillor Audrey Doig is a WASPI woman, and I would very much think that Audrey will want to come in this debate. Councillor Neil Graham said he's asking the Labour government to do something. He's in opposition, the Tories in opposition, they're asking Labour and government to do something that they wouldn't do in government. And the reason that was given, to use Councillor Graham's words, there's no money. Now, Councillor McMillan spoke about is to do the issue why we can't pay them right now is to do with the state of the finances. The specific point I want to make, especially to the Labour group and to Labour colleagues, and I do have a lot of respect for Councillor AnnDowling, because Councillor AnnDowling has got more of a backbone than the Labour Renfrewshire MPs. Councillor Dowling is happy to disagree with Labour policy. She's doing it here with the WASPI women. She's also did it in relation to transgender ideology, and I'm quite sure she's paid a high political price for that within her own party. So credit where credit is due. But my question really is to the Labour group here. The state of the finances. The Labour Party historically were a Keynesian party, like the Liberals, like the SNP and government. They believed that you have to practice Keynesian economics, you have to borrow in order to grow. It's how you manage the borrowing that is important. Now, why has Rachel Reeves and the Labour government abandoned this? Why, if Rachel Reeves had been the Chancellor in 1946, there'd have been no NHS. Because she'd have gone to the House of Commons and said, I'm sorry, we're broke. The state of the finances say, while we'd like to do this, we simply can't afford it. When did that policy change within the Labour Party? And I'd really like an answer from some of the genuine folk in the Labour group, and there are many here, most of them are genuine people. For goodness sake, why has the Labour Party in government in London, why has it abandoned Keynesian economics? It's been a tenet of Labour governments for decades in different ways. There is the money there. You can raise the money using the economic levers. And I have to say as well, I do agree with Councillor Devine. I'm very cynical about the warmonger Starmer. For goodness sake, to quote the Prime Minister, we will put British boots in the ground. Aye, well, is NATO going to support you? Are we going to have a decade of more body bags coming back to places like Renfrewshire because he wants to go to war to possibly save his falling ratings at home? He's a disgrace. But I still think there's some hope for Labour colleagues in this chamber if they can put enough pressure on their Labour MPs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doig. Councillor Jim Patterson.
Thanks, Provost. I suppose just a couple of points I'd like to make. I don't know how we got into defence spending on this one. That's not what I saw this one going to be honest with you, but fair enough. Point people want to make the point on that issue. I suppose I would only say it demonstrates that when there's political will, the money can be found. But I don't take an issue with the decision that's been made regarding defence spending, I'll be honest with you. At this time, given there's such an existential threat facing us at the moment in terms of that. But that's very off topic, and I just want to address it because several people have brought it up. I want to go back to the last full council when I kind of suggested that we would be finding ourselves in this position on a fairly regular basis now that Labour are in government, and it's not comfortable. It's something that we've had to contend with for several years, and we've had to sit and take our medicine, and that's fine. I don't mind with criticism when criticism's due. I say I suppose I admire the chutzpah. For the Labour group for putting the motion up and taking the issue head on. I think fair enough. That's something I think is worthy of admiration. Although I agree with the amendment and think it should have been stronger. I suppose one of the issues I would take is that the doors. I suppose I'm quite a pragmatic person, and I'm fairly middle of the road when it comes to my politics, generally speaking. And I probably, deep in my heart, didn't think that there would be a solution for WASPI women in the first budget, just like there wasn't a solution for all sorts of things in the first budget. What I've been surprised about with the way the senior members of the Labour Party, your Rachel Reeves and Liz Kendalls, have slammed the door shut and there ever been any solution, rather than saying, listen, we'd love to help you, we're working on it, keep working with us, and maybe budget 2. It's the fact that the door's been slammed shut I find really strange, and not wanting to keep that dialogue open, as much as we'd all prefer it was sorted as soon as possible. I just find that kind of line of thinking from the Labour government at Westminster odd. But that's the decision they've made, and now we're in the position we are, and there's a divergence in opinion at the Holyrood Party for Labour, and then there's a divergence again for the council, and that's not unhealthy, I suppose, and that's fine. I've really finished that. I mean, we've continued to support the WASPI women from that point of view. I'm hoping, and I can see some Labour hands up, because as much as I would enjoy doing this, please come in and correct the contribution from Councillor Graham, who has never once contributed in this issue. And all the times we've discussed it until today, when he doesn't actually have to, he's in opposition mode, which is fine. But don't just sit there and kid on that you've backed this for day one. We had this motion back several times, and he's never even spoken it. He used to be quiet and hoped it went away. You know, so to sit there and criticise Labour, fine, but don't make out that if yous had been voted back in, God help us, that yous would have done anything about it any different. I remember Douglas Ross posting with the WASPI women, remember him? Saying he would sort it out when he got down there to Westminster, and he spent 5 years down there, and then I think he spent the next 5 years avoiding the WASPI women. You know, so there's history there. So I'm sure, I see Councillor Graham's got a hand up, so I'm looking forward to our contribution on that, and I'm sure Councillor AnnDowling, who will get the chance to come in, will school her Conservative colleagues in that, because that's a slight that can't be allowed to stand by anybody. And then I'll just finish on, and it was something Councillor Smith during the budget that I couldn't let lie. I couldn't let lie that we never disagree with our party. I think you'll find I was quoted in the Daily Record and had it read back to me at my vetting panel when I disagreed with our party. about the National Care Service and had to do some fair explaining to the panel about why I'd said something different. But that demonstrated, but I felt very passionately about that issue, as you clearly do on issues. And when sometimes you have to make that break. But I just wanted to get that on the record because I couldn't have that stand. Anyway, thanks very much. And I hope we come to some kind of agreement here because I think we're all kind of heading in the same direction. But I think some obviously political points have to be made. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Gillian Graham.
Thank you very much. You know, the WASPI women are here today and they're looking for our support, and they've patiently waited for their motion to come up and be discussed. The vast majority of us here believes the WASPI women must be compensated in line with the PHSO report and recommendations. Can we please not use this as an opportunity for political mudslinging? I know we have political points to make, but sometimes it's getting a bit nasty, and the people at the back of the room, that's who's important here. The WASPI women at the back of the chamber and across Renfrewshire, and I think Councillor McMillan's got it absolutely spot on. Yes, it's a motion by the Labour group, but what's important is they get compensation. So can we agree a motion so that we throw our full support behind the WASPI women. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Audrey Doig.
Thank you, Provost. As my husband has already alluded to, I am a WASPI woman. I am 67 years old. I had to wait another. I had to wait for my pension longer than anticipated. As a young mother, I had a plan in life, and that had to basically change when we didn't really get a hell of a lot of information. These women will tell you how long it was until they came that they had to make decisions as carers, maybe to leave their work early, to look after people that were close to them, etc., expecting their money to come when they were 60. And then the government at the time, and I'm not too sure who it was, whether it was Labour or Tory, but certainly one of them made the decision, no, we'll equalise your pay and your pensions, and we'll let the women wait another 5 years to 65. And then we got hit with the next government saying, no, you're going to have to be 66 or 67 before you get that as well. So it's not just a case of one thing that hurt us. They've hurt us several times in trying to get what we've earned over the years. I basically have a moral question for the Labour Party. In the last fortnight, monies have been found all of a sudden for Keir Starmer to take over to Donald Trump and say, it's okay, we've found more money. We'll let you make sure that we're paying more money to defend Ukraine and to put our defence budget up. I've not heard any other European countries saying that, but that money was found very quickly. Why hasn't it been found for the WASPI women? And I think it's because they think, just let them stand back and they'll moan about it for a wee while, but it'll be okay. Well, Gavin Newlands, the MP that got put out of his seat by Labour Party members, didn't say that. He didn't stand back for absolutely any time to basically back the WASPI women. The women here will guarantee you and tell you how often Gavin worked with these women to get their point of view over and to get the basically government to have the Ombudsman look at it. And to turn around and say within the first so many months, no, we can't do it and it's all the Tories' fault is absolutely ridiculous. If only the MPs that we have in Renfrewshire now had half the backbone that Gavin had, and now would basically stand up with these women and say, this isn't good enough. Let's basically do the Ombudsman's job for them and give them this money. So I'll ask in the Renfrewshire Labour Party to go to these new MPs and say, get a backbone.
Councillor AnnDowling.
Thanks, Provost. Just so that I've got the procedure right, I'm going to speak to our motions and some of the responses, but we will have a chance to speak to the amendments. Is that correct?
No, you just, you're a second.
Okay, so it needs to be you then.
Ian gets the opportunity.
That's fine, thanks. I just wanted to clarify. That's fine, thank you. I'm going to respond in two parts. The second part will be responding to some of the highly politicised comments that have been made today. Before I start though, I just want to point out to Councillor Doig, the voters of Renfrewshire voted at the SNP MPs. That was a reflection on their judgment on their performance on any number of issues. So just to clarify that, nothing to do with the Labour Party members. It was more than that achieved that result. On this very important issue, I continue to support the WASPI campaign, which calls for a swift resolution to this ongoing injustice. And I continue to support fair compensation schemes for these women. I am very disappointed at the WASPI decision, and there is justified frustration that there will not be compensation for the women impacted, that no compensation is being offered to the thousands of Renfrewshire women impacted by the Tory decision to raise their pension age without proper notice. 1950s born women have experienced financial loss and negative impacts on their health and emotional well-being. I agree with Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar that the UK government could have arrived at a fairer compromise for the women affected. The government has accepted that 1950s born women are victims of maladministration. And the UK government is rightly focused on fixing the Tory economic mess it inherited. For anyone to argue differently in this chamber, I would like to see their workings, because we all know in our mortgage rates, our rent increases over the years, the cost of food, inflation through the roof. We know exactly what we've been dealing with in the back of Tory government. And the Labour government is also right to recognise the injustice suffered by the WASPI women. But in recognising this injustice, our hope is to see a compromise position that will allow for a form of compensation for the WASPI women affected by this long-running failure. I think the previous comments by Councillor McMillan referring to the Ombudsman make it clear where we stand on that. I am proud of the last Labour government's record on helping the lowest paid women pensioners and the life-changing improvements that we delivered. Just to give one brief example, the introduction of working tax credits was a game changer for me and many other women when I most needed it when raising a young family. But this issue today is about the way the state pension age was communicated. The government has accepted that 1950s born women are victims of maladministration, and the key here is fairness. These women lost out due to poor communication, and that needs to be put right. The UK government was right to issue an apology to WASPI women. However, it was wrong on the decision to not offer compensation and could have come to a fairer compromise. That could take the form of some form of targeted or tapered support rather than blanket compensation up front, or WASPI women could be handed compensation as direct payments or adjustments to their state pension. There are many, many ways that this can be approached. The detail is for ministers to look at, but look again, they must. Now, I'd like to move on to the final comments that I have. And that's to pick up on the tone and some of the highly political comments that have been made by some elected members in this chamber. I thank Councillor Andy Doig for his acknowledgement that I have long championed this cause and appreciate those comments. And what I've also done in the past with the full support of the Renfrewshire Labour Group is to go for as much of a cross-party consensus as we could, because the women sitting in this hall will have a variety of political allegiances. They care about this WASPI issue, and that's what we have always tried to do with our approach. I'm really disappointed that today that has been thrown out the window completely. So I'm going to pick up some points briefly. I had to laugh at Councillor Devine and Councillor Nicholson somehow accusing me of being a mouthpiece for other people. I think they're quite clear by my record that I'm more than capable of speaking for myself. Thanks very much. So I'd like to, it's quite misogynistic, those comments, and I'd like to just rebut that. But moving on, I agree with Councillor Cameron that WASPI women shouldn't have to be. Now, I am very happy to offer a standalone session to go into this detail of what we can do right now, as well as reaching out to the UK Labour government, what we can do in Scotland right now. I'll just touch on it briefly. If you want to take up that offer, we are here for that. But the SNP have known for almost a decade that they have the powers right now to help mitigate. I will happily speak to that.
Members. That's the problem. Despite what you say, Alison, this is a highly political issue, and members are rightly feeling the emotion over this issue. So please try not to instigate any further.
I appreciate that, Provost, but fair is fair. I have sat and listened to many claims, highly political claims, and I feel it is fair that I get a chance to rebut some of that. It's not fair for the administration members to get speaker after speaker after speaker, and these claims are stacking up. Now, I can speak very briefly on that, if you will.
Councillor Dowling, can I just stop you there? I don't know what you mean by that. They're getting speaker after speaker. I'm allowing every single person to come in here who has their hand up, regardless of whether they're administration or they're not. And I think you have to admit that I am always fair in relation to who speaks and who doesn't. I let everybody in. I let them go over their 5 minutes, especially at a budget meeting, because this is the most important meeting of the year. And this issue is probably the single most important issue that has ever been debated in this chamber in a long time. So I appreciate that the emotions are heightened, but please, if you can just try and keep it a wee bit more calm. Thank you.
Thank you. I am more than happy to do that, Provost, and I do acknowledge what you've said there. But I would expect that throughout this chamber, and I think some of the tone and the raised voices today don't reflect your wishes there. So if I could pick up, and I do appreciate your indulgence, but I hope you will give me a little bit of latitude, and I won't take advantage of it. But given that this is such an important issue, and we do have WASPI women in here, I think it is appreciated if I could just respond. We are happy to work on a cross-party basis, and we will support any suggestions that come forward from the SNP government that we can look at to mitigate the injustice that WASPI women have endured. We don't have to wait. We can do it now. Now, Jane Freeman, the very capable Social Security Minister who sat for the SNP a few years back, she was written to by the then UK Pensions Minister under an FOI, which is why I say the SNP know fine well that while pensions are reserved under Section 24 of the Scotland Act, Scottish Government is enabled to increase pensions to anyone they like. He also referred to the powers in Section 26 and 28, which enables the Scottish Government to make payments to anyone, including those without an entitlement to a reserved benefit, which means that women who are not yet entitled to a pension could receive a benefit from the Scottish Government. Now, I'll say one last sentence in that, because I raised this in, I think it was 2018, and you really indulged me, so I remember that, Provost. You gave me the time to make these points then. I have raised this before. I have raised it in debate with Mary Black when she was the then MP. This is not new. The Scottish Government can pay increased pensions to WASPI women. They can also pay a benefit to any women affected by WASPI before their state pension kicks in. Now, that is not to try and get the UK Labour government off the hook. I think no. Our motion.
The more you interrupt, the longer it's going to. I need to remind you, you're almost at 10 minutes.
Okay, I'll wind up. Thank you. Our motion clearly recognises that we do not agree with this decision. So why you keep implying that it's anything else is ridiculous. We recognise that this is an issue, and we've given the WASPI women their backing in moving this to a much better resolution for compensation. But let's not pretend that the SNP government one of the most powerful devolved legislations in the world, does not have the ability to do something about this right now. And I'll say one last sentence, and thank you, Provost, for letting me finish this. I don't think anyone could really credibly criticise my credentials as a woman. And I'm a little bit offended with some of the comments that have been made in terms of women speaking up on this issue. But given that the SNP and most of the members in this room don't even want to say publicly what a woman is, I think you shouldn't be casting stones. Thank you.
Right. Listen. Please, a wee bit of order. Order, please. I absolutely do not accept that comment, Alison, and I think the fact that you're sitting there smiling is not, it's really not appropriate. I'm going to move on. Councillor Mary McGurk, if anybody wants to come in and address anything that Alison said, then you're able to. You can stick your hand up. Please don't interrupt. Councillor Mary McGurk.
Thanks, Provost. As a WASPI woman, I can tell you that it has not been easy for the WASPI women over the last few years. I'm fortunate I can work, but many of them couldn't work, and many of them were leaving their jobs to look after family members and grandchildren, and did not know that they weren't going to get their pension in time. And they then would come to people like me to ask for assistance to see if the council could help them or redirect them to where they could potentially get assistance. And most of them couldn't get assistance. They then had to go to family members. And that's a fact. And it's still happening today. I didn't pay my tax to the Scottish Government, Alison. I paid it to the UK Government. I paid my pension to the UK Government. And I was expecting my pension to come from the UK Government. And whilst I do get my pension, I didn't get my WASPI pension. For 6 years, I was without anything for a period of time. I had to then go back and get another job. That's what happened to me. But I was lucky. There was a lot of women who weren't lucky, and they're still not lucky. They still can't find work and weren't able to work, but they still didn't get their pension. And you have been out there helping these women, supporting them and saying that you support them, but you work for an MP. And I don't see your MP out helping those women now. They did during the election campaign, were asking for photographs to be taken and they're saying they were going to go into that parliament and support them. I haven't heard that. They've sat there and just allowed it to happen. It's shocking because it is a shame because she does genuinely want to support you, but her party are not doing it. And that's the problem here. Your party has let them down. Again, you said you were criticising the Tories. You're actually worse for a Labour Party to do what you're doing today and what you have been doing. Thanks, Provost.
Councillor Cathy McEwen.
Well, can I just say, first of all, I wasn't going to say anything. I was going to try and keep out of this, but by golly, some of the things that I've had to sit here and listen to. Now, Alison, you did make a point of saying to us, you can't hear me? Oh, sorry. Right. Okay. You will have heard me perhaps saying I wasn't going to come in, but I feel now I've got to come in. Alison, you made a point of saying that what we have to remember is that it was the Scottish people who voted in the Labour government at Westminster. You made a point of saying that. You said, don't forget that. Well, I think it was the word change that happened at the time. Because people are always looking for change all the time. And you used it and used it and used it. So the change came. By golly, the change came, but not the way that we thought it was going to come. WASPI woman, you're not getting the compensation. Winter fuel payment, you're not getting it. That's it. You'll need to apply. You need to go through a benefit check, etc. National insurance payment changing. For heaven's sake, nobody expected that change. Now, Ian, you did make a point of saying, I understand financial problems that the Labour Westminster are having to deal with.
But you would also at the same time understand that there is other options to deal with it. And I think, my God, it's well before time. Tax the tax dodgers. I cannot believe what's happening in this country. And come on, settle down. I actually thought we were coming together, and we should be. But let's stop this. Okay, let's get these women what they're due as soon as possible. They're due it. Okay.
Councillor Emma Rodden.
Thanks, Provost. I had no intention of coming in here, but after Councillor Dowling's most recent contribution, I absolutely had to. I think it's disingenuous and the utmost level of hypocrisy for an elected member for the Labour Party to sit here and tell the Chamber that the Scottish Government should be mitigating decision after decision after decision that is made in Westminster in successive governments of both colours. You have mentioned in previous meetings about the winter fuel payment. Oh, it's sad we couldn't afford to pay that. But you know who could pay it? Scottish Government, National Insurance and now WASPI, amongst many, many other matters. Decisions are made at Westminster and we've to mitigate them without the financial levers of independence. Give us the financial levers of independence. Go and speak to your pals in the Parliamentary Labour Party. Ask them to give us the opportunity to vote again on independence, and we will mitigate it till the cows come home. But until you give us that opportunity, we shouldn't be expected to fix your mistakes or their mistakes without the money that we need to do that. It's absolutely disgraceful to expect us to clean up your mess, and it's disingenuous to the people that are here today expecting justice and all they get is lip service. Let's not forget it was the Labour Party in Glasgow City Council that denied women for decades their equal pay, the money that should have been in their pocket. And who was it that stepped in and sorted it all out? The SNP. You can't expect us to sort your mistakes every time. You have to take responsibility for the decisions that your party makes.
Councillor Rodden. Councillor Jim Patterson.
Thanks, Provost. I appreciate the opportunity to come back in. Some of it has been covered. I wanted to just set the record straight on one issue. I don't know if there's some kind of suggestion that we in the SNP don't accept that the government could create a benefit or a pension top-up or whatever. I fully accept that. However, I fundamentally, ideologically disagree that we should have to do it. That's the issue I've got with it. Now, I don't speak in behalf of the WASPI campaign. I'm not sure some may be happy with that solution. However, if I was involved in the campaign and I had put my money, I'd be expecting the government that I'd paid my money to sort the problem, although I recognise that some may agree with the point of view that Councillor AnnDowling's put forward. Now, when I made my contribution, I thought I was fairly level. Who knows, maybe I wasn't. And I had hoped that when the Labour group got the time to make their contributions, they would focus the attack on the real culprits of this, but they decided not to. They decided to focus it on the SNP government and accused us of politicising the issue. Maybe some of us didn't, and that's fine, but the Conservatives have, again, rode this debate out with the minimal contribution when it was their government in the 90s under John Major that set this all in motion. Was there maladministration when following governments? Aye, there was. But I would ultimately wouldn't hold them ultimately responsible. It was the Conservatives that set this in motion. So the Conservatives have ignored the issue when they were in government for as long as they were. There would have been hope that the Labour Party would fix it. I kind of said, well, I would hope they would, and maybe not as quick as that. And the comments about it was the people in Renfrewshire that voted the SNP out. It was, and it was painful. It was personally painful, actually, in one particular case for me. I like to wonder if that election was to run again today, and with the people knowing what they know now, if they knew it 7 months ago, would the result have been the same? I tend to not think so. I mean, we've had opinion polls rammed down our throats for the last 15 years in this chamber. The opinion polls suggest now that the result wouldn't be the same because people have ultimately been disappointed with the pace and scale of change. I think that's slightly unfair on the Labour government in some aspects. this issue not so much, but other aspects I think you need to give them time to untangle what the unholy mess that they've been left. So to have the fire directed in us on this issue, I wasn't expecting it. I knew an amendment wouldn't get support, but I wasn't expecting it to be turned on us when the culprit's in the room. We're the party with the least blame in this one. It's not often I can say that at this chamber. We've got that to do. We were in government at all. We've got nothing to do with it. Should we fix it? Maybe some people think. I ideologically don't think the Scottish Government, regardless of what party leads it, should mitigate this. It's a mitigation too far for me. And that's where I stand in the issue. So it's not that I don't accept it, that it could happen. However, I don't accept that it should happen, because I think that would be letting the real culprits off the hook. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Ben Smith.
Thanks very much, Provost. It's a shame that we are where we are, although I do still hope that we can remember that I think we largely do agree on the substantive points of the motion, and maybe we can keep that in mind. However, Provost, I do feel as though I have to put on the record that I do feel uncomfortable and object to a lot of what's happened in the chamber today. If you recall, earlier on, some of us in the Labour benches were rebuked for a fairly minor reaction to something that Councillor Doig said, which is fair enough, Provost, but I think when you compare that to the level of aggression, to be honest, when specifically Councillor AnnDowling was speaking, I highly object to that. I don't think it paints individual councillors in a good light, and I don't think it paints us within the chamber in a good light, especially when it's senior councillors that are doing so. So I think we can clearly feel differently and passionately disagree, but we still need to show each other respect, and that level of aggression I don't think is acceptable. Having said that, I do still hope that we can kind of find some common ground on this issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Perhaps I can I can only speak for myself, and perhaps I can explain a wee bit to you about how I was annoyed. I'm annoyed because there's a difference between being political and being abusive. That's a difference for me. And I think one of the statements that Councillor AnnDowling made was personally abusive. And that is why I was quite annoyed at what she said. That's my answer there, and I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to move on to one of the seconders of the amendments, David McGonigal, and ask him if he wants to come in and say anything.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fucking hell, man. Couldn't make it up. Honestly, Christ.
Okay, summing up, Councillor McMillan.
Geez, oh, how can you sum up that? It's quite a powerful debate. Motions running high on this particular issue. I agree with Councillor Patterson that the Conservative government our previous Conservative government just washed their hands. They set this whole thing in motion, and maybe their election chances would have improved if they had agreed with the Ombudsman in March and done something about it. Who knows? But they chose not to. I'm certainly pleased that the Scottish Labour Party have moved in a direction, demanding that the Ombudsman's recommendations are adhered to, and I'm quite happy they've done that. That might be different from Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. That might be different for them. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm more behind Anna Sarwar on this particular issue, and I'm sorry if I was maybe misunderstood, or I made myself misunderstood. I don't want to wait for this for the next 5-10 years. I want it to happen now as well, and I think it can happen. Now, not to say that every single penny of compensation can be paid tomorrow, but I think there could be some kind of mechanism, that payments can be made. I think it's important that the money goes into people's pockets. Now, in the spirit of cooperation, I'm certainly happy to accept the first part of Councillor Cameron's amendment. We want to keep it recognised that there is a financial situation, and that this is driving the decision. We can't kid on the place is in a bit of a mess. We can't kid that on. That would be naive. So I'm more than happy to, and I'm not sure how we would all equate in terms of English and making complete sense, because I haven't really had time to sit and write it all out. But certainly the first part, before the word delete, I'm certainly happy in behalf of the Labour group to accept that. If that beefs it up a bit, our motion, and if it brings us closer together, despite some of the things that have been going on in the last half hour, 45 minutes or so, I don't think we're that far removed. We just want to see WASPI women rightly compensated. And I'll finally just say by what the Ombudsman said, and I'll replace the word the expression DWP by government. So I'm kind of paraphrasing slightly. The Ombudsman said, the department, so I'll say the government must do the right thing and it must be held to account for failure to do so. So that's basically where we're coming from. So you can let me.
Okay. We're going to go to the votes. Councillor, how do you feel, Jacqueline?
I think given, I think obviously we agree on a lot, but I really don't want to leave that bit, the bit about the Tory bit. I want to keep that deleted. Sorry, Ian. I understand that you're extending the hand of friendship, but I just think that it's kind of a bit of an excuse, to be honest. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, just before we go to the vote, I want to thank everyone for their patience. I want to thank the ladies, particularly who have come along here today. It's been a long day for you. I recognise that. Despite how you might feel about things that have been said in the arguments today, basically most people are on your side. So I just want to let you know that, and I wish you all the very best of luck moving forward. And I really, really hope that you can get your justice. I really do. And so we're going to move to the vote, and then I'm proposing having a wee 15-minute break before we move on to the next three motions. Okay.
Thank you, Provost. We'll be moving forward to a roll call vote. Given there are two separate amendments, there will be two stages to the voting process. So the first stage is to...
Hold on, Mark. Yes.
Thanks. Just so I'm clear, is the SNP the SNP putting the same amendment forward as they were before? But just to make things a bit easier, I'm quite happy to take our amendment off the table. So it's just the Labour motion and the SNP amendment, and just have one vote.
That's absolutely your choice to do that. Yeah. Okay. So it's a straightforward vote between the Labour motion and the SNP amendment.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor Graham, for confirming that. So on that basis, there will be just a single vote. So this is a motion by Councillor McMillan, seconded by Councillor AnnDowling, with an amendment by Councillor Jacqueline Cameron, seconded by Councillor McGurk. Could members confirm whether they're voting for Councillor McMillan's motion or Councillor Jacqueline Cameron's amendment? Councillor Adam.
Amendment.
Councillor Aileen Nicholson.
Amendment.
Councillor AnnDowling.
Motion.
Councillor Burns. Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Amendment.
Provost Cameron.
Amendment.
Councillor Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor Clark.
Motion.
Councillor Davidson.
Motion.
Councillor Devine. Councillor Andy Doig.
Amendment.
Councillor Roger Doig.
Amendment.
Councillor Gilmore.
Motion.
Councillor Gillian Graham.
Motion.
Councillor Neil Graham.
Amendment.
Councillor Gray.
Amendment.
Councillor Hood. Councillor Hughes.
Amendment.
Councillor Innes.
Amendment.
Councillor Leishman.
Amendment.
Councillor McFarlane.
Amendment.
Councillor James McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Kenny McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Max McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor McCulloch.
Motion.
Councillor MacDonald.
Motion.
Councillor McEwen.
Amendment.
Councillor McGonigal.
Amendment.
Councillor Maguire.
Motion.
Councillor McGurk.
Amendment.
Councillor McMillan.
Motion.
Councillor McNaughton.
Amendment.
Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Mullen. Councillor Mylet.
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholson.
Amendment.
Councillor Patterson.
Amendment.
Councillor Rodden.
Amendment.
Councillor Shaw,
Amendment.
Councillor Smith,
Motion.
Councillor Steele. Councillor Hannigan has voted for the amendment. I have 12 for the motion, 30 for the amendment. The amendment is carried.
Okay. When you have a wee break, I think the WASPI, some of the WASPI ladies want a wee photograph up here before they leave. So if anybody wants to join us, please feel free. 15 minutes, but we'll be back here for 2 o'clock, please. Okay.